start by opening, I have Firefox queued up and open here. And I have it on our website, mnsu.edu/365. And this is just a great spot to get started on accessing everything Microsoft that we have. And so I'll scroll down here. And as I was saying, if there's something I mentioned today, an app that I mentioned today that you're interested in, please come here and go down to the Learning Resources section. And you can find a link for Microsoft 365 video collection. And what that'll take you to is our LinkedIn Learning instance. And here you'll enter your email address. So for me, it's brian.johnson@mnsu.edu. And you can sign in, and everything that I mentioned today has a training session available in LinkedIn Learning that you can take at your own pace. And so you can press play, watch the videos, press pause, look through kind of a list of all the topics that are covered and find exactly what it is you're looking for. So if they're covering a topic you're already familiar with, you can skip past that. And it's really great self-paced learning available to you anytime. And that's part of our license. So I just wanted to mention that if there's something I mentioned that if there's something that I talk about that you want to dive deeper in, please start with LinkedIn Learning as a place to really dive in on that topic. And everything I talk about today is available to you, like I mentioned, through your Microsoft license. And the first thing you need to know is how to log in and how to get access to this great suite of software that we have available to us. And like I mentioned before, mnsu.edu/365. And you'll come down here and we have a nice big yellow button that says log into your Microsoft 365 account. And the reason I'm using this web browser right now is I know it's not logged in for me yet. So when I click on it, you can see what it looks like the first time you sign in. And what it will take you to is this MnState login screen, this MnState Microsoft login screen. And right here in the field where we can enter our credentials, you'll see a nice reminder that says what you need to enter here, because this can be a little confusing for people. Do I use my university email address? Do I use something else? So this kind of just has a reminder right here. For students, you'll use your star ID at go.minstate.edu. And for staff, you'll use star ID at minstate.edu. And the next thing it's going to do is ask me to approve my sign-in. And I have two-factor authentication running. And so what this means is on my phone, I can go enter these 2 digits on my phone. And it's basically a way for Microsoft to verify that it's me signing in. So if someone happened to come across my email address and my password, they wouldn't be able to log in and access all the stuff. It's doing this second check and saying, hey, Brian, is this you logging in? And if so, prove it. Enter this code, which is 83, into your app. So some people might have this set up with a phone call, or they might have it set up with a text message. But either way, it's going to verify that it's you signing in. So if you ever get a text or something prompting you to sign in, and you're not at a computer trying to sign in, that might be a sign that someone's trying to access your account. That shouldn't be. So this next screen says stay signed in. So I've heard of some people who feel frustrated by Microsoft signing in process. They're constantly having to sign in over and over and over again. And maybe what they missed is this screen, which says stay signed in. So if you're using a secure computer, one that only you have access to and no one else does, on this screen that asks if you want to stay signed in, you can click yes. And what that does then, now anytime I use this browser on this computer, I'm already signed in. I don't have to go through that process of entering star ID at minstate.edu. I don't have to enter my password, and I don't have to do my two-factor authentication. But like I said, the important part there is that you're using a secure computer that no one else has access to. And I'm doing that. So, and if you work in a shared space, like in IT, we have cubicles and shared work environment. When I walk away from my computer, I always make sure to lock it before I leave. So on a Windows computer, you can quickly hit the Windows button in L, and that will lock your computer as you walk away. So like I said, I'm gonna click yes here. And this is gonna take me a place that I think everyone here is familiar with, which is MathMail. And specifically, it's an application called Outlook. And Outlook is a hub for a few services provided by Microsoft. One, it's our email, which is our university's official communication method. And it's also a hub for your calendar and your personal contacts. So over here on the left menu, my top option is mail. And beneath that, I have calendar. And beneath that, I have people, which is just another way of talking about the contacts that I have. So there's lots of different ways that the people section gets populated. One, because it's part of our Microsoft environment. We have a address book called a directory. And that includes anyone within MnState that has an account like this. is searchable within our directory. And so a great benefit of using Microsoft 365 is that everyone who comes here, whether faculty, staff, or student, from the day they start to the day they finish, they have an account and are searchable within our directory so that you can do things like email them, share files with them, add them to Teams. And all this just happens automatically from the day people begin to the day they leave. So, all right. I wanted to start here because I think this is where most people are at a minimum. They're at least signed in here. And right now I'm demonstrating this all through a web browser. This is also, you can also access Outlook through an installed application. And I have, that shortcut down here. I could quick pop that open and show you just the quick difference between accessing Outlook via a browser or via the web. You'll notice if you look at Microsoft over the years that these two things are becoming closer and closer together, that sometimes they do something new on the web and they bring that over to the installed application. So one example of that is here on the left menu. I showed you how there's the mail icon and the calendar icon and the people icon. In the installed application of Microsoft Outlook, there's also the mail icon, the calendar icon, and the people icon. So they're trying to make these experiences as similar as possible. The great thing about an installed application versus doing things through your web browser is there's usually a few more there's a little bit more functionality, and maybe it works a little faster because it's already downloaded and cached some of the information. But there's actually the opposite now too. Sometimes in the web browser, they add new features that are available in the web browser that maybe haven't made it to the installed application yet. So there are these different options. Some people I work with prefer to do things on the web, and some people I work with prefer to do things in the application. So whichever you prefer, just know that these two options exist. And if you're ever, working from somewhere remotely, maybe you're at family's house, but you want a quick check-in on something from work, you can, as long as you have a web browser and your access to your two-factor authentication, you'd be able to sign in from that browser and be able to access all the same information that I'm demonstrating here. So, all right, that's about how you access this, but what else is there other than Outlook? So to get to that, on the upper left-hand corner here is a grid of dots, and this is called the app launcher. So when I select on this, it's going to show me a list of popular apps and an option to go to all apps or to go to Microsoft 365. So one thing I want to mention is that I mentioned these installed applications. If you're using a university issued computer, you likely already have these apps installed. But if you are working on a computer that doesn't have these apps installed, the way you would do that, this is especially important for students and something that if you work with students regularly, and we hope that you'll share, is that they can download these apps onto their personal computers. So when I select, let me show that one more time. I just select Microsoft 365. It popped open a new tab. And from here in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button for install apps. And from here, I'll hit that drop down and I can choose which I want to select. And in this case, Microsoft 365 app that includes Outlook, OneDrive for Business, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and more. Once I select that, it's going to download an exe file for me. And I can run and install that, and it will install all these applications so that I now have an installed version. And when I fire them up for the first time, I'll enter my credentials, starid@minstate.edu, and my password and my two-factor authentication, and I'll be up and running with the installed applications, as well as being able to access them on the web. And the great thing about these, you're really looking at the same data, just in a different way. So whether you're using an installed application or on the web, they should work the same. And if you're saving them in a place like OneDrive and Teams, which I'll mention later, or SharePoint, they're saving and they're syncing, and they're all accessible to the same data, the same versions. You don't have to, you have to keep track of where you were working with that one file. Was I working that with an installed, or was I working that with on the web? Doesn't matter. If you're using Office 365 and all the tools that I'm going to demonstrate here, you'll have access to all the same data. All right, so that was how to install apps. Now I'm going to go back to my app launcher, select that, and now we're going to take a look at all the apps that we have here. So I'm going to select all apps. And here in the left menu, you'll see lots of options, and we're not going to have time to really dive in deep on all of them. So I just want to highlight a few. I already talked about Outlook. The next one is a classic that I think most people are familiar with, is Microsoft Word. So let me just pop that open for a second. Now, when I open Word, it's going to take me to this view where I can either choose to create a new document, choose from templates, some recommended documents, things that I've been working on recently. Down here, a list of files that I've been working on recently. So you see here my notes for this very presentation I have open, and I edited 11 minutes ago, so I could pop that open. Let me open a blank document, and this is an interface I'm sure you're all familiar with. There's some really cool features here if you haven't played with Word for a while. Some that I like dictate. So if I just have some thoughts that I want to get down on paper, I can come here and hit this button. And as I speak, it will transcribe what it is that I'm saying. So, and I also have that on the installed application. So just to show that distinction between those two things, I want to click the start button here and show you where I would find that on my computer. So once I click the start button, the first thing I see here is a list of applications. And on a Mac, this would be in your applications folder. But I can scroll down to M. Is a good first place to look, because a lot of stuff we have is Microsoft. Though Microsoft does a weird thing. Sometimes they label things with Microsoft, like Microsoft Teams, and sometimes they don't. So I think with Word, it's just listed as Word. So I can come down here to Word and select Word. And that opened up my other window, so let me drag that up here. But just like I showed you before on the web, how it had blank documents and different templates, and then some recent documents that I've worked with, it's doing that same thing here with the installed version of Word. So I'll click blank document, and you can see whether I'm in my web browser here or using the installed version here, I have access to essentially the same core functionality. And this is the same across all of the Microsoft Office documents. So there's Word documents is a common application for just like general documents, paragraphs and headers and titles and that kind of stuff. Excel for, collecting information in tables and rows, in columns and rows, and PowerPoint for creating slide decks. So you'll see a very common interface here with along the top, you have all your different functionality. And like I mentioned before, the dictate button. So here, when I select that, I can start talking, and it will dictate everything that I say. Go back to my app launcher, and I mentioned Excel once again. Works very much like Word. It's going to take me, when I select Excel, to options to open some recently used files or to create a blank workbook. And when I select that, it just pops open into a new tab. And here I can start working in Excel. And similarly, PowerPoint, same kind of thing. If I pop PowerPoint open, it's that same interface. And you're going to see that consistency throughout the Microsoft 365 environment. And here I'm working on it in the browser. Here I can click start and find these same apps. I actually have them pinned over here in this section of my start menu: Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. All right, let me clean some of these up here and get into some maybe lesser known applications. So next up, I want to talk about OneDrive. OneDrive is really, Microsoft gave us a great way to create all these files. And with OneDrive, they gave us a great way to save all these files, and to not only just save them, but to save them to the cloud so that they're backed up. Everyone who uses a computer has probably at least heard of the potential of having their computer fail on them and losing access to everything. Well, with OneDrive, it's going to sync all your files to the cloud. And so they're not just on your one computer, they are automatically synced over and available and backed up and available anywhere in the world that you are. So if you use the OneDrive application that I just showed, I also recommend using the installed application, which you can get to by clicking the start button and going to OneDrive here. I already have it running on this computer. So if I click this up arrow, I can unhide it. Right now it's kind of hidden down here in my taskbar, but I'm going to take and I'm going to drag it down to where I can see it. When I select that, I can see that my files are synced. So anything that I'm working on here is going to sync from my computer to my OneDrive. Oh, with OneDrive, a couple of things I wanted to mention. You get 1 terabyte of storage by default. You don't even have to ask for it. Just from the day you get here, you get that. And if you do max it out, you can submit a request. And I think there are ways that we can add additional storage if you need it, if you're a heavy user. So, and OneDrive, I like to think of as a place for your files. And the reason I make that distinction is because the next thing I'm going to talk about is Microsoft Teams. And Microsoft Teams is really a great solution for our files. So if you're part of a team, that is where you want to store the files that you're working on that other people depend on as much as you. So OneDrive for your files, Microsoft Teams for our files. And so in the example from our session earlier this week, we had Microsoft March 2023. The files that we think are important to all of us, that all of us should have access to, I have in the Files tab here. And it's a place for us to store. I have an Excel file, a Word file, a PowerPoint file that's available for me and my team. I don't want to store things in my OneDrive and not have them at a minimum shared, but in general, the primary storage location should be a place like Teams, because if you're ever unavailable and your teams need those files, you want them to be able to have access to them. So it's just a really important thing. We've heard some horror stories of people unexpectedly leaving the university, and they were the one who had some of the files that were needed. And it's a bit cumbersome to try to retrieve those then. So kind of as you're working in your departments, think about creating systems that will kind of last a long time and any unexpected changes. So storing files, for example, in Microsoft Teams in a shared environment rather than in your personal environment. Now, using OneDrive for your own documents. So when my boss sends me my performance evaluation, for example, well, I don't want to share that in a team. I'm going to go ahead and share that in my OneDrive. All right. Microsoft Teams also great for chat, for impromptu video conversations, for meetings. Obviously, we still, on this campus, we're heavy Zoom users, so it's, it's just another option. It's always good to have multiple options. With Teams, you could create meetings in Teams that are kind of corresponding and give you a space for your files within Teams. But of course, Zoom is also great for meetings. So kind of pick whichever one works best for you and your team. The next one I wanted to highlight is OneNote. This is a personal favorite of mine. OneNote uses the metaphor of notebooks, sections, and pages. So if I come here, typically when you have a notebook, you're going to want to use that same notebook over and over. So I have a single notebook for myself that I've been using for something like 15 years or more. And so I have tons of information built up. And what I use my OneNote notebook for is putting information that I know I'm going to need later, but I'm not sure what to do with. I don't want to store it in its own file, because then I'm poking through different files and opening one up and nope, it's not there. Open up another one. But in OneNote, it lets me create, like I said, these sections and these pages. And so if I'm working on a project, so let's say we say Microsoft March, and we have meeting notes, I can start collecting those here. And then let's say I'm on another project, say FlexSync 2.0. If I was on that project, I can create a page for that, or I can create a whole section for that, because I know I'm probably going to need, as these projects grow and grow, I'm probably going to have more and more information that I need to collect, notes I need to take. And so it's just a great place to store all that information. It's kind of like a personal knowledge base is the way it works for me. You can take screenshots and pictures. You can do a lot of fancy stuff with text. So if you've been needing a place just to jot down miscellaneous things as you go through your workday, OneNote is the place to do it. All right, next up, another one I want to mention is To Do. And as I mentioned before about your stuff versus our stuff, Microsoft To Do is the place for your tasks. So this is a great place for you to store your tasks. Kind of like OneDrive, you can actually share, a section for To Do with maybe one other person, maybe even a few other people, and that's a way to do it. But the thing I want to mention along with To Do is Planner. And Planner is really a great place for our tasks. So if you're working on with a team of probably more than 2 people, then I really recommend getting into Planner. So let me just pop open To-Do and show you what this looks like. It's really a simple to-do list. So by default, it goes to my day, and I can say that for today, I want to prep for Microsoft March. And now I have that noted as a task for today. I've got some old tasks in here because we've been given demonstrations over the years and we built up some tasks. So I can go see what my important tasks are. In our big project plan, I have send email, I have some TPS reports I need to get to, and I have my Microsoft March follow-up. So these are some tasks that were labeled as important, and you can see this one's from last March, so it's a little overdue. And like I mentioned, to do for my tasks, Planner for our tasks. I'm going to pop over to Planner. Planner is really cool. It's a Kanban style way to organize a project. And so I have a few examples here that I've been working with people, but let me open up my Microsoft March tests file. And I can see here in my to-do section, I have a bucket for to-do, and add demo user to plan. I have Steve assigned to that. So this is a really cool place. Like I said, if you're working with a team, that you can add tasks for individuals or for topics. So one example I like to give is let's say you're launching a website. I might do a bucket for pre-launch actions or tasks. And I might have one for post-launch tasks. And now I can create a task for this, which is, load all content. And I can assign that to people. So from here, there's a lot of different information I can add to it, but one of the cool things is I can assign people to it. So here, for example, I can assign me. And when I close that out, now my members can filter based on lots of different things, but in one way they can filter is to see, all right, what does Steve have to do in this project? And once I select Steve, it filters out all the other tasks and show me just what Steve has, and he has items in the to-do items. So that's Planner, and we're getting down to the final few minutes here. I can't believe how fast this is going. The other ones I want to mention, bookings is really cool. If you want to create a web page for people to be able to access your calendar but not see specific things, so you can basically configure times that you're available, and people can then pick a time that works for them, sign up, and it will send you an email and put an item on your calendar and book appointments with you. So this works great both for teams and for individuals. So I really recommend bookings. Forms, I know Lexi mentioned that we'd be talking about forms. Forms is A+ for collecting information from people. So anytime you can, if you know you have a big project coming up where you need information from people, think first about collecting it in a form. Don't, I think an old instinct was to say, email me this information when you have it. But ideally, you structure that information. You decide what it is that you need from people. You create those fields in forms, and you send them a forms link. And what that will do is it will put it into a spreadsheet for you and really organize it for you. Then from a spreadsheet, you can really work with the data in a way that is more efficient. And one more topic I'm going to mention on the same note, Power Automate is a really cool service that lets you connect all these, have these applications work between each other. So an example I like to give is forms. Anytime a form is submitted, I can use Power Automate to take that information and post all the responses into a Microsoft Teams message, or I can have it add the data to an Excel file, or I can have it do both those things, and I can have it automatically email the person that submitted the file with some extra information. So Power Automate just lets you work between these apps and have them all work together in a way that really makes a lot of sense.
If you scroll all the way down near the bottom, Brian, there is a little comparison between Microsoft apps versus Google apps. So I want to give a shout out to this because oftentimes we see some staff still using Google if they came from a previous employer who used that suite. We see a lot of students come in using Google because that's maybe what they used in high school, but we really want to encourage you to move over to the Microsoft 365 suite if you haven't already, because it's just going to make your life so much easier. Everybody who's at the university already has an account. You can easily share, and it has all those same apps like Gmail equals Outlook, right? Google Drive equals OneDrive. Google Forms equals Microsoft Forms. Google Docs equals Microsoft Word Docs. So it's just a really quick switch that you can make that's going to make your life a lot easier. So I would encourage you and students to do that if you haven't already.
Not only is it your experience will be better because it's kind of already integrated within our university. It has like all the people, for example, that I mentioned before. We know that they already have an account from the day they get here, but also it's who we have an agreement with. So we have an agreement with Microsoft that they can store our files and that they're going to do it in a way that's compliant with our regulations and in a way that we need them to. We don't have that agreement with Google for things like doing your email through Google, doing forms collection, doing docs collection. We don't have those same agreements with Google, so you really shouldn't be storing any information in Google that is university, protected information. You should really be storing that in your Microsoft 365 University account because we don't have those same agreements. When you sign up for Google, like a Gmail account, and start using it for work, you're probably actually violating the license that you're agreeing to with Google. That's not the license that you have. You're creating that as an individual, not as an employee of the university. So just keep that in mind as when you're choosing the solutions that you need to get your work done.